In a few moments, you will have an experience which will seem completely real. It will be the result of your subconscious fears transformed to your conscious awareness. You have 5 seconds to terminate this tape. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's going on, everybody? How's it hanging? Happy Wednesday. Another We Are So Back Wednesday and another BG-Cast Wednesday live podcast. Real quick, I want to thank all of the new subscribers and followers over on Rumble and YouTube. Thank you guys for coming over and checking me out. I greatly appreciate it. And other than that, if you are new here tonight, please give a like if you like what you hear. Give me a follow if you want to join me for this very interesting ride. We're all on here, this humanity ascension test or whatever it could potentially be. I'm going to tell you what, the energies have been really interesting lately. I know a lot of you out there have been experiencing a lot of downloads, a lot of, realizations, new things coming to the surface. And I know it can have you feeling a little bit fragmented. And we're going to be talking about that tonight, but we're also going to be covering a very, very important topic. It's important to me, and it's also important to my guest. We're going to be talking about overcoming the victim mentality first and foremost, because this needs to be addressed. We've been seeing a lot of different things coming out of our conscious collective at this point that could be definitely tied to this subconscious victim mentality. And we're also going to be talking about the dueling dance of the divine masculine and feminine. We see the very interesting way the manosphere is playing out at this point in time with people like Andrew Tate. And we also see how the femisphere, I guess we'll call it at this point, I don't know if that's exactly the word, is turning out, and we're going to kind of break that down a little bit too. But nonetheless, let me introduce my guest. She is our friend, the Spirit Mom. She is a metaphysical minister. She's got her own show, her own channel. She is part of our Conscious Collective X panel, you guys. So technically, this is her second solo appearance on the show. She has been on the show many other times. But her second solo appearance tonight, I want to welcome back my good friend, Transcending Ascension, Mrs. Dyanna. How are you doing tonight?
Good. Happy to be here again and to talk about our topic, because it's basically the main thing I focus on, because it's what matters most in this whole process of ascension and learning. None of it matters anything at all if you don't fix yourself emotionally.
Absolutely, 100%, man. And we both are on that same wavelength, that the healing and, working on yourself on the inside and repairing yourself is the ultimate spiritual growth in both of our eyes. It's the most important thing. And, I feel like it gets overlooked a lot of the time. I feel like a lot of people, they are bypassing this very important thing, and they're moving into like this very different space, and they are starting to kind of like jump the gun. And I guess the best way I can describe this is this: we have what I would call a subconscious victim mentality that's almost kind of like plaguing our conscious collective. And what I feel like this comes from, we see the spiritual egotism. Both you and I and the rest of the panel have talked about the spiritual egotism. We see starseed influencers. We see these self-proclaimed masters and gurus, who are really like not being good to people in our collective. And I really feel like a lot of this stems from this subconscious victim mentality that we're experiencing. So let me get your thoughts on that, Dyanna, because I think really it goes hand in hand. Because if somebody's wounded and unhealed or not working on their healing, and that can kind of transfer into this spiritual egotism, because that wound is bolstering their ego. Let me hear your thoughts on this, because I know you specialize in this.
Yes. 100%. You see it a lot of places. One thing I had personally was this cult I've told you about that I was in. I won't name names because I don't want to besmirch anyone, and love and honor to everybody. But I joined this girl's community when she was more new, and it was right before she blew up. So it was like this intuitive thing to jump in. And so I got to experience all the back videos because she's one of those people that had a community, and I got to witness all the back videos. And she was right from the very oldest, so sweet and loving, like a typical empath, like just the sweetest. And I get that was probably a little fake too, because she was still in her wounding and didn't feel good enough. And you can watch how she becomes confident week after week. As more people join her community, she gets more and more confident, right? Well, then you get to the point where I joined and she was still okay. I was in love with her. She had so many beautiful things to say. She actually did have really great wisdom. But then move forward a couple more weeks, a month, now 2 months. And I watched her start to turn. She would start to tell us that our questions were straight up stupid. Okay, we're in your community to get answers to our questions, but she would tell us they're stupid. And then I started to realize it's because she couldn't comprehend what I was saying. I realized that later because I've been told now that I do podcasts that I ask really complicated questions and I get really deep in my theories. And it's one thing to like not be a right answer or anything like that, but to tell someone their answer is stupid. I mean, come on. If that's not from the ego, then what is, right? And it wasn't just me. That was just one thing she said to me. And honestly, I'm a kind of person that I could take insults to me easier than I can take insults to somebody else, because I would watch her, because my questions were about aliens and dimensions and stuff. But then other people would ask questions about themselves, about their own personal emotional issues. And I just watched as she got nastier and nastier. And we had a Discord group where we met and we had community and we finally felt like we had friends, and like what we do now with our group. I had that once before years ago when I was in this cult. That's what I call it now. But because when a leader turns tyrannical, you can call it a cult. And she wanted us to only talk about her teachings. We were not allowed discussing other people's teachings. So in this Discord group, we get talking, and then the questions she wouldn't answer, we'd bring to each other. And we were all getting more and more educated in these matters of spirit and all these things. Like, I didn't go into her group as a novice. I went in already having my own channel and already teaching. I was just looking for community, and I just liked her energy. I liked that she was saying things like it's okay to be angry. So she was breaking the narrative there. But yeah, she shut down our Discord group. And that was like, okay, that was when I was like, well, okay, because she'd already been tyrannical. I'd already, so I was just like, enough is enough. And I left the community. And this is even just like one more little petty thing. I don't mind. It's only $33. But it's $33 a month to be in a group. And you're supposed to, obviously, when you cancel any subscription, get the rest of the month you already paid for. And I had just paid, and she canceled it and shut me out of everything immediately. And that just felt like, okay, so there was no love and loyalty there. I clearly didn't matter to you. And that was petty to block me out immediately. Like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, she took it in that way. And it just showed, like, you can blow up, you can have a huge audience, and you can not, actually might not be good for you. So like, I don't know how she is now, because it's years later. She's now got over 100,000 followers, and she's probably grown even bigger. She's still, I mean, I don't want to judge now, teach their own, but like, that was watching someone turn from like this sweetie pie woman to a tyrannical leader telling her own people that they were stupid and asking the wrong questions.
I just, that's, and I'm not even going to hide the name. And I experienced that with Ellen Red, and that when I put that post out there, after I had that phone conversation with her, it just blew my mind, because I mean, the phone conversation went down like this. She called me. She wanted to talk about a show because she wanted to come on to talk about her human trafficking story. And I'm like, of course, I'm all ears. Like, what do you want to talk about? And I had such a good first interview with her, and I didn't really see any of this behavior at first. I started to see it after the interview, though. And she's like, Stephen, I want to talk about my story with human trafficking. And she goes, but like, I'm an ascended master. I have excelled past this dimension. I exist in the heavenly realms, and I shouldn't have to lower myself to this minuscule human level and tell this story. I kid you not, it took everything in my power not to throw up in my mouth. I'm like sitting there on the phone. I'm like, and I just remember I was like, okay, well, and of course me, I'm like, well, Ellen, I think it's very brave that you are going to come on and you're going to tell your story. It takes a lot of strength to do that. That was kind of just my response. Meanwhile, I'm trying not to throw up in my mouth. And, other than that, I kind of let it go. And that was kind of like the first telltale sign. And then what really made me want to be like nothing to do with this person anymore, or at least kind of put a boundary up and like walk her away, was she asked, like, how do you feel about Julian Assange being released? Like, what are your honest thoughts? And I gave her my honest thoughts. I was like, he could potentially be involved with what's going on right now. There's, I say we need to have discernment with everybody. It doesn't matter if they appear like they're for us. And then she got like super, like, oh, these lowly human opinions and things like this, like passive aggressively, like trying to hit at me. And I just was like, I was like, you know what, man? I said, I don't have time for this. Like, I guess I need to like put up a boundary for myself, protect my energy, not allow myself to get intertwined. A couple of shout outs from everybody real quick before we move forward. We have Don Rogers from March 4th Productions. Don, thank you as always for being here, my friend, my soul brother, one of my soul brothers. And then we have the other soul brother, Andrew of Heavyweights Lights Feels. What's up, man? How's it going? Thanks for being here tonight. And I mean, you kind of painted a good picture with your story, Dyanna. And, when we're talking about this victim mentality too, I feel that's why a lot of people in their path, they get stuck in the surface level of it all. You know what I mean? We were talking about how it seems like people, they get stuck in the surface level of their awakening. And they get stuck in this to where they're just consistently just complaining about the problems. Woe is me. Like I'm in this prison planet, this prison world. I'm stuck here. I'm completely black-pilled. Everything is doom and gloom. I live in chaos. All of this bad stuff is happening to me. And I think ultimately that's kind of a thing that a lot of people get stuck in their evolution. We all kind of hit that point, or, we used to hit that point. And you actually sent me like this really cool graph or this really cool image I'm going to bring up right now. And I want to share it on the screen with everybody because, yes, this is exactly what I'm talking about, because this puts it up in such a picture perfect way. And yeah, thank you for sending me this. So what we have here is the victim loop and the accountability loop, right? So on the bottom, we can see there's some similarities. So we have situation and choice, right? And they're both kind of in line and in unison with each other. But then we have ignore, and then we have deny, and then we have blame. And then we have rationalize, and then we have resist, which, we can see a lot of people in the resist stage at this point, many different reasons. And then we have hide, and then it goes back to intention. But then, we hop up here to the accountability loop, right? And you see recognize, own, forgive, self-examine, learn, and take action. And, that's one of the things we see, in our conscious collective at this point in time. We see a lot of this deny, this blame, this rationalize, this resist. Okay. It seems like we just seem to want to sit here and be angry, have this victim mentality. And we just want to complain about the problems, and we just want to be in like our own echo chambers, and we want to just sit there and just be mad. But what if you just look at the beauty of jumping up to that accountability loop? It's very empowering, but accountability is scary to some people. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Many thoughts. And I'll start by going back to saying like what you said about how people get stuck in the beginning, because this is so true. And when I started my spiritual evolution, and you start seeing things even like crystals and chakras, like you'll see people get stuck there. And then as Karen told us, I don't know if you were there for that one, when she told us about going to a retreat, and it was that kind of spiritual person, and they had so many problems, and she couldn't believe that they couldn't see themselves clearly, but they were all chakras and
You want to know
crystals.
what's funny real quick? I don't want to cut you off. Synchronicity. Guess who's here?
Who? Yes, Sharon, I love you. That was a good story. It had deepness. And it's because those ladies get stuck in the early levels of spirituality. And like, so the same thing happened. And then they keep those same mental patterns. Well, throughout my journey, I hit walls. So with crystals, like I've told you before, like my memory doesn't remember exact things. So like exactly what each crystal is and exactly what they do. And even though I'm a certified herbalist, I couldn't tell you exactly what each and every herb does because that's just not how my brain works. So I would hit these walls with things like crystals and astrology, and I still love them. They're wonderful, but my brain would just move on and it would just move on. Well, guess where it didn't move on from? And that's like the Jungian way. That's the Jungian philosophy of spirituality. And what does hand in hand with digging out the shadow and fixing victim mentality automatically. And I myself like was a perfect victim mentality person. Because I was a stereotypical nice person. I was nice, but all these things would happen to me and it would weigh, right? Because that's just how the all is mind works. So when you take the Carl Jung philosophies and mix it with the all is mind, that's where I have found my never ending space. That's where there's never been a wall. That's where I just keep digging and digging deeper and coming up with further and further ways to just dig out that self, because it's not nothing, because you can root out one ego and have it die, because that's what we think it dies. And it does a bit because egos are not real. They're not permanent, but you're going to have a next ego, another ego that might come into its own trappings. And then and so you need to keep that process going. What I love about this chart, and I tweeted it earlier, is the choice point, especially even the situation, take action and hide, but the choice point, recognize or ignore. Because I would always get intuitive hits back in my whinier days of don't do that, don't say that, don't go there, maybe that is your own fault, like things like that. And I would be like, oh, shut up, and just carry on. And so recognize and ignore are so vital. And I like here that this chart doesn't even have like a success. It's not even a success loop. Like that's a different loop. This actually, the way you go through it, choice, recognize, own, forgive, self-examine, learn, take action. That sounds to me like the plan didn't even work out. So it's like a perfect example of how not to fall into victim mentality. Because you could recognize, own, and then succeed. And then there's no need to forgive and all that, like technically. But this one's showing you how you can still fail, but stay in higher realms of existence. Because if you fall and go, poor me, you're not going to learn anything, for one. And for two, you're going to create this sort of vibrational energy of the all is mind power to just create more negative spirals for yourself. You'll end up more worse off than you would have been. And this is why people can think, oh, I'm better off not even to try because it makes so many things go wrong. And it's like, yeah, if you stay in the Eeyore life, but if you swap and just get in the warrior mindset, and this is why I love that term, the warrior, in this last few years, you really see it coming online for people, because a warrior is not going into war knowing they're going to survive. They can be very confident about themselves and know like they stand high chances, but like a proper, intelligent, well-balanced person knows that there is still things out of our midst. Even if the all is mind, 95% of our mind is subconscious. So we always have to be ready for landmines or anything to come our way while still aiming correctly. So it is a complicated situation because of our own psyche. Our own psyche is the complicated part. But if we get into that right warrior mindset, we're going to win in the end. And either way, we're going to keep going up, up, up.
Absolutely. No. And I'm with you, because we've spoken about this before. Even though I have been, in a lot of ways, I've always been spiritual, but there was a time where I had this victim mentality, especially before like the age of 20. I was making like a lot of bad decisions. Like I was like just not and I would get mad at all of the things that were happening to me. And it's ironic because I even though I believed in God, I would get mad at God. I would be like, like, why are you letting this happen to me, God? Like, why is all of this stuff happening to me? And then, a few years later, once I hit 20 years old, and I was like, well, wait a minute, God's within me. I was like, I was making all this shit happen to myself, and it was through my own actions, and it was through these bad behaviors and this trauma that I think this is still a hurdle for a lot of people, though, because when we talk about personal accountability, it's a very empowering thing. Don't get me wrong, because you take that power and you understand that you are the creator of your world, you are the creator of your existence, but it's also a lot of responsibility. And I feel like this is where the healing comes in hand, because you have that process where the healing and accountability work together, right? Because as you heal yourself and as you understand and you gain this understanding, like, okay, I am the reason for 99% of the things that happen to me, and it's now I can understand and take accountability. And I think that's one of the biggest missing gaps we have in our spiritual community and our conscious collective right now. We have everybody wanting to go from step 1 to step 10. It's like, they want to start the evolution. And I love that. That's awesome. You know what I mean? Good for you. And like, welcome aboard. But you can't just pass step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and expect to get to 10. You have people who start their spiritual evolution, then they want to be a starseed influencer, or it's like, then you have people who just want to start, and it's like they hop to all these different things, and they don't go through this process. They don't go through the healing. And I think this is what not only solidifies the victim mentality in people, but it also kind of causes the ego to like overcorrect itself. You know what I mean? Become more prominent, and like that's one of the biggest things. Of course, we need our ego to exist in this 3D realm. If we didn't have it, we would be, don't get me wrong, this is good sometimes. We'd be laying on the floor in just complete oneness at all times with everything. And while that's needed from time to time, don't get me wrong, it's good to do that on occasion. Doing it all the time, you're not getting your work done here. You know what I mean? That you need to do. So that's why the ego, but it's understanding that balance. And that's why I've always kind of tried to correct it. It's not the killing of the ego. You want to soften it. You know what I mean? You want to allow it to be an ornament like Shiva wears around his neck with the serpent. But like, I think, wait, Dyanna, you're muted.
Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
I see you there. There you go. But
I was gonna say, you want to be the programmer, like what you're saying.
Exactly.
Agreed. But like, you want to be the programmer of the ego. It's a program, an outside program, but you want to be the conscious creator of it.
Absolutely, 100%. I agree with you. But I think that's where, because and don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming social media exactly, because like, it's a tool, and like anything, a tool can do really amazing things. And, and a tool can also cause destruction or bring out the worst in us. And I think, we see a lot of these people who do get up into these higher up big accounts that are spiritual. And this kind of puts like some kind of, I don't know if I would call it a influence on those who are just starting. And it in a lot of ways, it makes me feel like they bypass all of the important things and they just try to jump to this step.
Yeah. And you're going to see that in the Gen Zs. And I almost don't blame the Gen Zs, because that's how they operate. That's part of who they are now. And the alphas are going to probably be even more like that. And even myself, sometimes I have to wonder if, like, I get very virtual and I have to wonder how real I am. Like, it gets that much like how everything, like my business, everything I do is all online. So when it comes to people learning about spirituality and wanting to take it to this stage, I think as long as they're honest from the beginning, that they are like, I am here as one of you, which even both me and you do. Like, we're not here going, I'm the guru, bow to me. We're here saying we're learning. We've been learning for a very long time. You and I have both been learning pre-COVID. That doesn't make us, it just makes us we've experienced a different world. We experienced what it was like to be alone. And to be truly alone, where it was like you heard weird fringe topics a little, like the holistic world was there. And there, but like, no, it
Mhm.
wasn't the way the Hermetics, and then you had like, because I got into pagan and Wiccan because that was the
Mhm.
only thing that really existed. Had I known about the Hermetics and that the occult wasn't just something that they said on Buffy, you know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
actually like a lot of it was actually real. It's just Hollywoodized, like all that existing now. And then so the noobs get to come in and just immediately know about the Hermetics. They get that blessing. Like that's a true blessing. Like, because everybody knows about the Kybalion. You ask anybody about help, the first thing they're going to tell you to do is
Mhm.
read the Kybalion, right?
Mhm.
Because so I don't blame them, weirdly enough, as long as they're honest that they're still healing, but they want it because we can be so alone with it that like bringing it online, it creates like that, because humans are very social. Whether or not we want to be cool loners, we can't. We there's a part of us that stays offline and not existing. Because for example, like when I started my show, I certainly wasn't done healing. I'm
Mhm.
way further on my healing now. But doing the show helped me heal faster. It's not like I had healed a lot. Like I was out of victim mentality and I was moved on a lot, but there was still way more that was going to come. So is anyone ever done healing? And like, I don't know. As long as everything's done in authenticity, I think you should have a show. You should talk out your things. Just stay honest where you are. It would be my thing.
I absolutely agree with you. A couple of comments. I'll tell you my thoughts on that. I just started running around ethereal, touching on stuff like a candy store. And I
Yes.
know I'll correct his spelling error here, but he says I just fell ass backwards into it and started asking questions. And freaking that was a lot of this, man. But I'm with you, and I agree with you, Dyanna, because my show's helped me heal. Like I know exactly what you're talking about. And a lot of people who have been with me since season 1 of the show, I know you guys out there who are still here have seen a very big difference. I know you have. Don't get me wrong, Kriya Yoga had a lot to do with that. Don't get me wrong. I always say stuff about Kriya. I know I'm a spokesperson for it. But yes, it did. It helped me heal. And it kind of helped push me in I guess you could say almost a teacher mode, because at that point, like I had gotten kind of out of the at that point the spiritual egotism side of things. It was still kind of dwindling a little bit. We talked about why that happens. You're in a, especially for people like us, when we woke up before COVID and things like that, like we were alone, like we were trying to like Paul Revere it. We wanted to help people, we wanted to be like, did you know fluoride's in your water? Did you know the food is poison? Did you know our currency is fake? Like, did you
And
know all of this?
I was telling
No, go ahead.
people not to do certain.
Dyanna, you there? You froze a little bit. Dyanna. Oh no, there you go. Okay, cool. There you are. All right, cool. Like you were in suspended animation for like just a few seconds, but what were you saying?
Was it the terrible face?
Yeah, you were like,
Oh, okay. What was I saying? Oh, it's completely lost me.
it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. No worries. No worries. But no, nonetheless, yes, I completely agree with you. The show has helped me heal, and I agree with you about the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas too. And I think, really one of the biggest things that I think a lot of people who are in these positions of influence, need to kind of start putting the healing out there as more of a message. Like we see everybody talking about the extraterrestrial races. We see everybody talking about stuff going on with the pyramids, like Atlantis. Don't get me wrong, I'm big into Atlantis too. It's a favorite thing of mine, and we see a lot of these other things being elevated in these spiritual concepts. We see a lot of these, and I'm not saying these things aren't important, and they're
No,
not
they should
true.
be side projects though. They should be
Exactly.
like the hobby where the healing and the getting rid of the victim mentality needs to be the main bread and butter. Like that's the job. The other stuff's flavoring and it's fun because depending on our timelines, those stories vary. So if you don't up yourself, you might have the lower versions of those stories, or some of them might be missing or completely different. Like if you want the higher versions, like what just happened now, if that's true with the thingies under the pyramid and possibly the grids coming back online, if they know about it, then you need to keep moving this up. Because if you don't move this up, those side stories mean nothing to you. If you're not fixing your life, they mean nothing. In fact, you might open up detrimental versions.
I would completely agree with you. And I think that's where a lot of it lies, in this victim mentality that is kind of subconsciously implanted in us, because also too, we have this programming within us that it's subconscious, and the conscious programming, I'm going to admit, is, it can be overrided at a easier rate. It's that subconscious programming that we carry with us that's really, really, it's tough to weed out. It's tough to reprogram. It can be done though. Like, don't get me wrong, a lot of us are doing it right now, but since we've been born, we have been conditioned, not only, number one, to always look without. Okay. Look without for validation, look without for love, look without for answers to the bigger questions in life. We are always conditioned to look without, from the day that we are born. And, couple that with the subconscious programming of the less than, like if you're an average person out there, right? Or, you're somebody average in our collective. And I wouldn't even say average, because we're all awesome and we're all amazing. But in the eyes of society, if you are not one of the quote unquote elites or this, you're subconsciously conditioned that you are less than these people, and that you are less than, or you don't have power. So, that's also something that couples into this and goes along with this as well, is like yes, we can rise above and not be products of our environments. Well, certainly that's what we all strive to do. But that's something I think a lot of people have to acknowledge about themselves, and they have to be honest with themselves about, is that this conditioning is real. And, you can break free from it. You have the ability to break free from it. It is just the awareness of that.
Yeah. And that's why I started preaching awareness. Like, I trigger people when I say that word, but I don't know what else to say, because that's kind of what it feels like I do on Twitter, just like telling you all the things I think are going to help you. And I'm starting to like really get the messaging that awareness is one of the biggest keys. And we know the power of now. Most of us have read it, and it's so vital. It is that power of now. But I find like certain words, like how I love the space of allowing, right? The same thing is with awareness. It just brings it home to that next level, because when you're aware, you can start to listen to yourself, respond to somebody. Because if you're having any kind of a tiff with somebody, any kind of a trigger, when I used to be in a position, and I still am, but it like happens very little now, because that's what happens when you weed them out. But if I had a trigger from somebody, I would be grateful. Like, and I know that's cheesy and cliche, but it's true, because if you're triggered, you get that moment when you're in awareness to go, why am I triggered? And then we trace it back, and we trace it back, and we trace it back. And it comes down, like Dr. David Hawkins said, that it usually comes down to a fear of death. But I usually find you can even bring it to a fear of abandonment, a fear of rejection, because to us and the way our DNA is, apparently a fear of rejection is the same as a fear of death. So like that's our triggers. And then so when we see that, oh, I'm afraid of being rejected, that's when we get into that warrior position. And then you go to yourself, so what? So what? They reject me. So what? I need to love myself most. And this is the lesson people need to get through to themselves. And this is where TV and all those things are dangerous, because they teach you that you need this and you need that, and your house isn't perfect. Like, that's one thing kids help me get over, because they ruin my house all the time. That's why I love my chair and using it upstairs, because it's like, I don't need to fix everything they've done, because they're little, like they're, kids are kids. But it really gets you to just be like, I am who I am, regardless of the state of my van or the state of my house. I am who I am. And that just is what it is. And I decide who I am. Okay. Like, I decide it, and you decide it for yourself. So that's really where that place comes in. So whatever your trigger is, you're going to trace it back. you're going to find that spot. So instead of going into victim mentality, that means, so instead of going, poor me, oh, here it goes again, oh, God hates me. Like I say it in a terribly condescending tone because I'm dramatic, but I've been there. I'm making fun of myself when I do these things because this is why I feel like they say God put you in these positions for a reason. I was such a, like, I had no excuse for being as poor me as I was, put it that way. No, my parents weren't perfect and my life wasn't perfect, but a lot of it always came down to my own attitude. I was very emo, very quick. And so being an empath, like, compassion to all us empaths, being an empath, you're feeling other people's emotions. I get that hurts. That can be painful. That's another thing. You just got to get used to being in pain and work through that as well, because you are an energy filter for the world. So like, you have to get on board with certain things to never go into that place of poor me. And then the reasons why are going to vary on your ego. It's going to tell you a whole bunch of different excuses. So stay in awareness and then listen to, because one thing the ego does, especially a lower end ego and victim mentality, is it'll have the same catchphrases that it will recycle over and over and over again, because those are specific programs it's going to insert into you. And you'll notice, if you stay in awareness, that the one sentence, if picked up, leads to this emotion, and that's picked up, leads to this action, and if that's picked up, leads to feeling sick, if that's picked up. Then the next day you feel like crap, and if that's picked up, and then bam, you've got a spiraling bad life because of one thought you agreed to. You chose to agree to that. Instead, the same horrible thing can happen, but you choose to be a warrior about it. You can trace back, find out why you feel negative about it, and then get into that place of, I can do this, even if it's not going to look out like you want. We need to also be in a flow of where it might not be exactly what I tried to make, but I can still make this the best thing that I can, like lemons out of lemonade. And then I just found out humans made the lemon. We made the lemon. It's a crossbreed we created ourselves. It's just, I thought that was so perfect to just show how powerful the human is, that we have this made lemonade out of lemons thing. And guess what? The human invented lemons. So that just right there shows how powerful we can be. Like, we really can do anything within our parameter. And what you want to do is bring your parameter to the best possible place you can. And it never stops getting better. Like, there's never going to be a moment where there's not a better choice to make and a better road you can go down. And then that just slowly but surely up Jacob's ladder makes your life better and better and better. And it's not like, I just had a big revelatory experience and I'm completely better like that. No, unfortunately, it can be years. But every week you're a little better. Every day you're a little better. And then 5 years down the road, you realize you're a completely different person and your life is completely better. And that's just what it is. And you just keep doing that game until we're president. I don't know.
Well, it's about taking your power. It's about understanding that you have that power to change your life and to create your world. And it's about understanding that power as well, that, your choices, your decisions, your actions ultimately affect your reality. A couple of things from the listeners real quick. We have Karen. Our feelings are our beliefs. When I'm triggered, I contemplate the negative belief I hold that makes me feel low vibe. That's an excellent thing to do, Karen. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm still weeding out deep slivers of victim mentality. I agree with Dawn about its link with poverty programming. And that gets me to Dawn's question, because I want both of us to answer this. Do you think victim mentality and poverty programming go hand in hand? What do you think about that, Dyanna?
Well, poverty mentality, tongue twister, is part of the victim mentality narrative. It is part of it, because that's where your majority of it's coming from. And we know egregores and we know collective consciousnesses. So you have both egregores, which are like artificial things latched onto the situation, but you also have collective consciousness that bands together, which is real. And that's all of us actually connecting in that regard. So you're going to fuel each other up. It's why certain communities stay in a certain situation. Like, if you have poverty consciousness, one of the best things you could do is move yourself to a richer area, and you're better off to stay at like whatever place you could afford in a richer area, but then be walking around rich people. It doesn't have to be the rich, but just higher, better, move it up. Because of all of if you're in a lower poverty mentality area and you want to move up, fantastic. but everybody else living in the same area doesn't, that's going to cause undue pressure. And I had this personally. I was living in a not nice city, which, I mean, if you might know it, so I'll tell you, Dawn, Hamilton, if you've ever heard of Hamilton, Steel Town. Not, I mean, sorry to everyone from there, but I lived there for 12 years. And I honestly blame, because I moved there in my early 20s, that my life might never have gone dark if I hadn't even moved there. Because in Toronto, I was still happy. But Hamilton brought on that energy. I felt it, especially as an empath, that viscerally affected me. Well, about 5 years ago now, we moved here to Norfolk County, if you've heard of it as well, Don, because I know he used to live in Ontario. But it changed everything overnight. And because I was around a complete, and it's not even a rich town, it's just nicer. It's more just like a middle class, even like lower middle class, but still it was a big step up from a big city with a big drug problem, poverty problem. Because like, especially in any city, you're going to get that problem. But wherever you are, you can even have towns. Like you see, like usually when something happens in a town, the whole town crumbles. Why? Because their minds are all feeding off each other. And that matters. So that is first and foremost for poverty mentality, because that I experienced, and it was a whoosh, life just instantly got better. And there was so many things, and then you still work through stuff. But when it comes to working through it, don't overspend on your credit card thinking it's going to tell the universe you're rich, because I tried that. You hear about live like you're rich. I did that, and I racked up tens of thousands of dollars, probably more. But so don't do
you
that.
And me both.
It's more just like learning to live modestly, but then also trusting the universe for when it matters. When I truly get heart-centered aligned with it, it kind of presents a way. Like I know you, like we know it, the divine can unfold, but the divine actually doesn't necessarily want us to be super rich. That's what I've learned. The divine actually doesn't want us wearing diamond bracelets and just being so fancy. It actually likes that struggle. I think about it in a video game, right? We don't, I was a gamer anyways. We don't like to cheat. You don't put it on easy. You can put the game on and throw it on easy and be done in a couple of days, but that's not how we like to play. We like to get our character leveling up and do all the things that require. I used to pick herbs for hours in Red Dead Redemption. Why? Because we want that struggle. We enjoy that. So if we enjoyed it in a video game, that probably means our soul enjoys it here. So it likes the montage of life getting better. So be prepared for it to be like inch by inch, but never stop inching. And then be aware of your circle, because your circle is going to be actually one of the bigger things that affect you negatively.
Real quick, I just want to say I'm with you on that, because I still like to play a game every now and then. I was a very nostalgic gamer, though. I liked a lot of the old stuff that I grew up with, and Mega Man 11 came out back a few years ago, and I was like, oh, new Mega Man game, all right, because I used to love Mega Man when I was a kid. I used to play it all the time. And I immediately put it on hard, like right off the rip. And I was like, I want the full experience here, like I want to go in, I want to see what it's like. But my answer to your question, Don, is yes, I do think they correlate. I think they can be intertwined, and they can be somewhat intertwined. They can work with each other, and in some ways they can be a little bit of their own kind of animal. And because you can have some aspects of poverty consciousness without victim mentality, but the victim mentality can bring forth poverty consciousness. You know what I mean? So like, I know people who don't necessarily hold the victim mentality, at least in a conscious way. It could be subconscious that they hold it, if for all I know. But they are very okay with telling themselves this is good enough. Or, they set that standard for themselves. They could just have, it's one thing to be grateful. And it's one thing to exercise an abundance mindset, but to constantly tell yourself that this is good enough when it's not good enough, or to be grateful for something that deep within you that you deserve more for, or that you do deserve more, I guess you could say, is that's where I think it kind of breaks away from the victim mentality. However, where the victim mentality can intertwine with poverty consciousness is where, you're not taking accountability for all of your bad decisions. And you are thinking that, the the universe is just throwing all of these bad scenarios at you, all of these bad instances, whether unexpected massive expenses, things like that. And to me, that is the victim mentality intertwining with poverty consciousness. And that's also the universe being like, hey, dude, you need to wake up here. You know what I mean? You need to gain some awareness of this, because right now, because you're saying all of this bad stuff is happening to you and you're putting this vibe out there too, more and more things are going to start to affect you. You're putting this vibe out, all of these bad things are happening to me. And then you put that energy out there and you're going to start attracting more of these bad things happening to you. And you'll start to get the mentality oh, I just might be a shitty person. I deserve all of these bad things like this. So this is where they start to kind of interconnect and they start to intertwine. So I think it's both. I think yes, they do go hand in hand. They can have some deviations from each other, depending on if the programming is either not there or it's subconscious, because the person might not even be aware of at that point that they're technically in the victim mentality. But if it's conscious and it's up front in our eyes, then yes, I think most certainly they go hand in hand. Don has one thing to say, and then I want to bring up one comment from Karen real quick. Amazing answers, thank you. And I still play Red Dead Redemption 2 on hard. Hell yes, my friend, hell yes. And then Karen actually said something really nice about you and I. So, and I want to say thank you, Karen. I appreciate it. I'm glad you experienced healings from doing streams with us. Heck yeah. Nonetheless, that sums up victim mentality. Let's hop on to our next subject, because we know some friends that have had some problems with this lately. And I kind of want to share my tips and tricks, and I want to hear your tips and tricks too, Dyanna. So what we're experiencing right now is we're getting a lot of very interesting energy coming in to our collective sphere, and very intense, very up and down. It's definitely, we live in very interesting times, but with that, we get downloads. We get downloads of this new information, and we get these, I'll say, these layers of the forgetting disappearing, as we grow on our spiritual evolution too. And with that comes new realizations, new remembrances. And sometimes these downloads, these realizations, and these remembrances can be so profound and life altering. I've had some myself that have completely, I've been back to the drawing board in my spiritual evolution, constantly. I have a drawing board sitting next to me right now, because something will come up and I'll be oh, well, throw that one out. We got to go back to the drawing board, and we got to reevaluate everything. And, so, I mean, one thing a lot of people though, especially early on their spiritual evolution, when they get these intense downloads, these intense realizations, these intense remembrances, it almost tends to put us in a state of distress. And, we can become very emotional. Sometimes we can't necessarily hold ourselves together. In some ways, I feel like we almost kind of fragment a little bit. And that's kind of the best way I can describe it, because we have this very core foundation of our perspective and our belief. And when something comes to the surface that completely shakes that up and completely just, overrides anything we thought to be true, that can be very intense for us. So, Dyanna, I want you to explain to everybody if you've experienced this yourself. And I would like to know some of your tips and tricks to help people kind of stay grounded when this happens to them. Kind of gain an understanding, this is normal. This is a normal part of the process. It can be intense, but it's normal. And some of your tips and tricks for how we can maybe integrate them on a better level without them fragmenting us.
So first and foremost, it's cognitive dissonance that you're going into. And that's an actual psychic term you can look, or psychology term you can look up. So when we hit, and which is happening a lot to us now, if you're not already awake to these things, but I know, and you can tell the difference because there's things I already know about that people are finding out about, and it's not upsetting me that it's moving forward because I've worked through that cognitive dissonance. And it's a good thing. It's part of that alchemical beaker as it boils. And I know I'm a little tree of life here. I've kind of I'm not sure how I feel about the tree of life anymore, but we know you can't see it anyways. You know, the DNA strands that, and bloop. So we start from the bottom, we move to the top, right? And then it flips. So we hit and then we feel like, oh, I'm amazing. But if you notice, it doesn't gently move up once you hit the top. It flips and you're hit with something that throws you into cognitive dissonance. And it could be anything. There's so many things like space isn't real. Like, oh God, maybe. Like, so this will like throw you and you have to allow it. Allow yourself to go slightly mentally ill. Like to, as much as you can do, I found like without, well, don't fall into victim mentality because you can get silly and then that can fall into one. So don't allow that. As crazy as you can go while still maintaining as much balance as possible, but you really do want to allow it because it could be physically painful. You actually might find yourself physically purging, and that can look in a whole different bunch of ways depending on your makeup. Like some people get headaches. I the last few weeks, I want to say maybe a month, I've actually been experiencing pain here, and it's like someone cracked me on the head with a hammer, but it's like awesome because I'm like, oh, crown is like opening. Because it could be so many things. And that's like, I haven't had it like actually punched down like there before, but I used to have headaches kind of everywhere or body aches, inflammation. And you just, again, want to allow it and nurse yourself through it in whatever your process is. This is where people can, I advise, and it was my process for years. I've moved past that. So like, it's not like it's a permanent thing, but microdosing and move past it for now. I might go back into it because we can cycle through stuff. But microdosing, especially with psilocybin, can help. And then just cannabis will like ease it. But microdosing psilocybin, what it will do is it can actually throw you into, well, that's more of an actual dose. Microdosing is kind of taking away the pain, where an actual dose, it can be a small dose, but it will take you into that pain harder and faster, but it will bring you out the other side harder and faster. So that's something I would advise. But honestly, if you don't want to touch anything, I love and honor that. So you just sit with the pain. And this is where I have a video on it. And it's my favorite thing now is the space of allowing. And I used to just talk about the heart chakra. So if you're looking at my old videos and I talk about the heart space, this is grown into the space of allowing, because I was like feeling into a knowing that is like now more of an actual solidified system. Because the space of allowing, it's like meditation, it's deep breathing, but then it's also feeling yourself in your heart and then expanding that. And that's when you learn to like feel into your aura. Like in any part of your spiritual journey, you want to start to learn to find your aura, feel your aura, and know how to move it around you and know how to, it becomes its own thing, like moving an arm. So then space of allowing and just expand. And you want to just, and then allowing is what it is. So whatever the cognitive dissonance is, whatever that tumultuous thing that's happening is, kind of allow it. Answers will come. Relief will come. But if you resist it, what you resist persists. Cheesy but true. And you'll just cause problems, and you won't get the upgrades and downloads that would have come to you otherwise. If you allow it and work through it in the natural way, like, because listen to your intuition, because it's different for everybody. For me, once upon a time, I had to have chips and Snickers bars every single night and just like go nuts. But I've moved past that. And now it's kind of nothing. Now I don't eat instead when I'm in that state. And it's like, because you're always changing and retooling, but you have to allow what is for you. Like, what is your thing? And then it just goes from there, and it's personal, but yeah, allow.
Yeah, I'm just joking I'm laughing at the Snickers bars in the chip. I can see you sitting there like all emotional, like holding a Snickers bar in one hand and a bag of chips in the other. Like, no, amazing answer. You actually have some of my tips and tricks too, but I would like to add some on as well. So the number one thing I'm going to say to each and everybody out there, okay, who is starting their spiritual evolution, who is starting their awakening journey, do not ever think you have it all figured out. That is my number one, because I know I went through the stages myself, and I got the divine backhand from it. And yes, the divine will backhand you if you think. That's the best way to describe it. It will be like slap. No, you don't. Like, here's your sign that you don't have it all figured out. And like, of course, like, you're going to go through these different layers of this evolution. you're going to hit that geopolitical layer, and then you're going to jump up, and the geopolitical layer and the conspiracy layer are kind of intertwined, but then you move really deep in and then you'll keep going, and you'll keep going, and you'll keep going. What you know as your truth today might not be your truth tomorrow. And that is something I want to make clear to a lot of everybody, because we tend to jump the gun. Like we find all of this new information. We have a little bit of new realizations, remembrances, and we think that this is it. This is almost like this subconscious thing, that this is it. Like, I've got it figured out now. But then as you grow and you continue to move forward, you're going to keep getting that shattered and shattered and shattered and shattered. Like I just said, like, I've been back to the drawing board in my evolution. I can't even count anymore on like my hands and my toes. I've been back at it for like for the past long time, 17 years, constantly going back. And, there was times where it was hard for me, because when young Steve, when he first started, there was periods of time where he thought he had it all figured out. And then the divine would be like, oh, young Steve, like, here's the slap. And now you're back to the drawing board. So that would be my number one thing to everybody. My number one piece of advice is never instill into you permanently that you always have everything figured out. Always keep yourself open and understand that the truth that you think is the truth today might not be the truth that you think is the truth tomorrow. And if you can just get that one in my opinion, that's going to help you out tremendously when you get these new remembrances and realizations, because you're going to be prepared. You're going to be like, okay, all right, this is new. This is coming to the surface. This isn't something I thought that could be true before, but because I was open to it, I can accept this, and I can look into it, and I can kind of integrate this a little better, and that would be my first piece of advice. The second piece of advice would be a sound meditation practice at all costs, because when you have a sound meditation practice, a daily meditation practice, you work into going into your neutral mind. Okay, when you're you guys have heard me talk about the neutral mind a lot, and how important it is for emotional transmutation, how important it is to overcome a lot of the sticking points in our journey, releasing attachment to things. When you meditate, you cultivate your neutral mind. And when you are strong in your neutral mind, you can allow yourself to go through this process, as painful as it might be, without it wrecking you. Without it, and like, yes, I agree with you. Let yourself kind of fall far out there too. You know what I mean? Let yourself get almost borderline schizo. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you need to kind of have like that bungee jump and come back. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you need to get thrown out into the void and come back. But, having a sound meditation practice is going to be key in integrating downloads and integrating these realizations and remembrances, because you're going to have a space of allowing, like you were just saying, approach, when this stuff comes up, because you're in that neutral mind. You're not attached in any way, shape, or form to what your truth was yesterday. You are accepting everything as it is in the now. So that would be definitely like my second piece of advice. I agree with you on psilocybin 100%. Especially, a macro dose will throw you headfirst into it. Don't get me wrong, but yes, it will send you out of the other side a lot faster. For those who might not be 100% ready for that yet, because I know some people are just getting new into that. That's my preferred way. Don't get me wrong. I think that's the best way. But microdosing, like 3 days on, 1 day off, 4 days on, 1 day off, and kind of reciprocating the cycle is not going to be as fast paced of it, but you are going to notice a difference. You're going to be able to integrate what you're experiencing a lot better. Also, clean food and clean diet. Make sure you're drinking lots of clean water. Make sure you're eating lots of clean food, because the downloads are coming in the organic food and the clean water now as well. They're coming in this food, these fruits and vegetables too. So if you're intaking, really good, clean energy, when your body has these remembrances and these realizations, and your physical health is in a very good state, that's going to carry over to your emotional health. That's going to carry over to your mental health. And you're going to be able to handle this on a better level. Of course, I'm not saying it's going to not be intense. I mean, you're still going to have these moments of intensity, especially when you get something that shatters the truth that you believed in yesterday. But however, I think if you do this complete package, especially what Dyanna said, walking into that space of allowing, and utilizing what's around you and kind of stepping out of the victim mentality. Don't sit on your couch with a bar of Snickers and chips. That goes against the clean food. But other than that, very sound advice, my friend. Very sound advice. I think that's awesome. I hope that helps some of you out there, who are just starting off on your spiritual evolution. I know it can be intense. I know it can be emotional. But nonetheless, let's hop into our third topic for the night. We were actually having a discussion about this, so I'm calling it the dueling dance of the divine masculine and feminine. And the reason why I'm calling it the dueling dance is because it almost is like a very dueling dance. We see a very huge, at least in my eyes, overcorrection at this point of these two energies in our society. We kind of first saw it come forth, which you enlightened me on, Dyanna, like back in the 60s. You know what I mean? Back kind of getting rid of that old, of course, 60s was the original awakening. The boomers were supposed to be doing what we're doing right now, but they didn't have the means or the technology to be doing this, but they were supposed to be kind of sticking it to the man and kind of setting forth that foundation, and they kind of did. It did help us out today too, so I'll give them props for that. But but kind of stifling that male mentality. That's where that whole women's rights and empowerment thing kind of started to shoot up in the 60s, because yes, back then I will agree kind of the way men were treating women, or some men were treating women overall in our collective society sense, was not a good way to be doing it. And that did kind of need to happen. But then as we saw this escalate, this overcorrection of the feminine energy at this point, it really kind of started to hit its peak into the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. We saw kind of the feminist movement start to come into play. We kind of started to see a lot of these different, I guess you could say, expressions of independent women. Women were kind of getting out of the house. They were no longer being housewives. They're going out to work jobs. I mean, this started a little bit before that even, but this was like the precipice, the peak of it, the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. And then what I think happened is the overcorrection kind of went silly, and it kind of turned into what it turned into, what we're viewing today. We see what I call neo-feminists. I don't call them real feminists at this point. They're attacking a lot of the masculine energy. They're attacking a lot of masculine traits. They're attacking a lot of, I guess you could say, I'll even say good masculine traits too. Like, I'll be the first to tell you there is such as a thing as toxic masculinity, but it's not what the left is calling toxic masculinity. It's not what the feminists are calling toxic masculinity. And and then we saw this overcorrection of the masculine start to occur. Right. And this kind of started to happen like in 2019 and 2020 with the manosphere, with people like Andrew Tate coming into the picture. People like Myron Gaines, the Whatever podcast, a lot of these other manosphere things that started to come in. And now we're kind of almost starting to see what happened with the overcorrection of the feminine energy starting to happen with the masculine energy now. And now we see like this rise of like men, being overtly, I got Karen. I just had to put that on there, Karen. But feminazi. But no, and that now we see like, these men like now, like, being disrespectful to women, treating them back as objects, trying to put them in like completely submissive roles. And we kind of see like, all of this weird like what I would call like almost like dark polarity masculine energy starting to emerge. You know, we see a lot of this aggression, like hyper aggression. We see a lot of this, you know, just we've talked about it, you know, like the stuff, you know, Andrew Tate says and a lot of these people in the manosphere. So I kind of want to pick your brain for a minute, Dyanna. Like, would you call this a dueling dance of the divine masculine and feminine? And I want to run this by you real quick before you answer. And I ultimately think what we're seeing is this dance, but eventually what's going to happen is this is going to settle at some point and something new is going to be born. And I think we're going to regain the balance that maybe we had in times earlier in antiquity, or this could be something completely new we generate. But let's hear your thoughts on it all.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. And so I'll just give you the whole story because this is divinely created. As you'll learn, a lot of darker histories can end up being divinely created for the ultimate end good. So you bring this back, and it's not the entire reason for World War II. This is just a byproduct. But come World War II, you had all the females getting to go to work, getting to make money, getting to be their own person while their husbands were gone. A large amount of the male population was gone. But then all of a sudden, that baseball show with Tom Hanks and the girls. What happened when the men came back? Back to the kitchen you go, ladies. And they didn't want that anymore. Now you had a large amount of women that were like, wait a minute, I cannot be beaten and think for myself. What? And then you pair that with Tibet getting infiltrated in the 50s by China and all the Tibetans having to flee to especially America. And that's divinely created on purpose. So they start creating, that was the Tibetans that end up being the root cause for the hippie revolution, because all these Tibetan Buddhist monks were now in America teaching people and inspiring the Americans to go back into India and to learn this stuff for themselves. And the reason that didn't last is because a lot of them weren't even star seeds. Some of them were, but not all of them were. They were just the young people getting on the bandwagon, like any young person will get on the bandwagon. But then when the bandwagon was over and they were old enough to start, you know, the certain wires start to click off. They didn't for star seeds. That's how you know you're a star seed. The wires don't click off. And that's why we can often get into depression and blah, blah, blah. That's a separate subject. But so they went back. And then again, you have these women that experienced this freedom life in the 60s now also going, I don't want to go back to the kitchen. I don't want to have a standard, or they were young. I don't want to have a standard life. And so we're creating this dissonance in the female. But what was before that? A severe dominating patriarchy where women were disgustingly abused. We were allowed to be ard. We were allowed to be beaten. Like all these things were allowed. We were property. We didn't get the vote until a shockingly late time. Like we were not people. So when the divine, and then this is where it kind of makes more sense that extraterrestrials came back to speed up our time, because we are definitely in a speed up, because that's why the divine had China flood Tibet and had all the men go to war and send the women to work, so that it would start to get these wheels turning. And then so we have the women coming about, but then their men are rejecting it. Divorce starts to increase. Children are like, what's going on? Then the government takes advantage of the women working and make it so women are forced to work. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for a bit. Like there was like windows when she was, and we were much happier children. But because of finance, they had poverty mentality. And so it was a mix of money, but also my dad would call her a lazy biatch and just put her down all the time because he's a man and she's lazy. And then that he had that He-Man style, but he was actually less gross than all other boomers because they were like borderline Gen X baby boomers. And so he was actually better than his friends, like, which is saying something. Like he actually overly didn't put down his daughters for being women. I mean, he did for other reasons, but not for being women. And then so I was raised wanting to take down men. Just to say that honestly, I had a vicious hate for men, and I wanted to destroy them all because they had destroyed us for so long. Like that's in our DNA, women. Like the fear of men is inside of our DNA because they did beat us for a very long time. And it takes 14 generations to actually work something out of an ancestral DNA. So we're not at 14 yet. So it'll even be a few more until that's out, where women, and then you take the feminine, and the feminine is programmed to kind of follow the masculine. But there's a reason for it. It's never because the male is better, yet you get an inferiority complex from females because men are seen as better. So even if we're still, this now getting into modern day where we're in this thing because women are trying to do what men do, but it's going wonky because that's what happened to me. This is another reason, like, I caused a lot of my own problems. It's like, I was the woman, hear me roar, working full time, I'm going to do it all. But no, it doesn't work that way. Females are not wired for that situation. We're not even, I don't want to say we're not wired to think for ourselves, but we are definitely better off when we think with the masculine. And by proxy, like, the masculine's better when they think with the feminine. The feminine has the capability to think of more because it goes into like children and the way our DNA is. We can see more, but because we can see more and our passive nature, the masculine helps us focus on which one we're picking. Like, the masculine's good at picking the best one and then carrying it that way. So what's happening right now? And then you have us that are born, like us, slightly the divergence that we've been talking about. Us divergence are, if you've noticed, much more gender neutral, which is why they took advantage, and they're making a lot. Like, I could have been one of those kids that was at risk of being oh, you're actually a boy, because I used to say, like, I wish I was a man. Like, life would be so much better, life would be so much easier, this is ridiculous. And I was not overly feminine, I'm a little girly, but like, there's some girls, like, I cannot relate to them. I was talking to someone today and I'm like, trying to, like, I can't relate to that kind of girl, and I can't relate to the Andrew Tate guy, because that's just so, like, not okay. And then you have this huge population of incels, and they kind of, they upset me because, like,
I'm with you.
Men have only been subjugated for like a couple decades, and they crumbled into the incels. They crumbled into wanting to get rid of all women and have robots be their women because they just can't handle us. We're so terrible. Yet I know it, but like, past life wise, but we're all different genders. So it's not their fault technically, but like, hello, and look at the women were beaten and submissive for as long as we have recorded history. So I think women going a little insane, and I might be biased because I'm a female, but women going a little crazy is excused. It's excused in my mind. Not that we shouldn't stop getting better, because I did. Like, I did ask my husband. I'm much nicer now, and I submit a little. Like, I still I do a little. I let him think you did, but like, it's not easy to just, like, we should learn to be equal bosses, and that's what marriage is about. And it's like, kind of like the going back and forth, because it's not solved, it's not finished. I'm not exactly sure on where we're supposed to end up. We're still in that dance, but I mean, I know we're going to end up as equals. That's what it is, because, you know, that's the yin and the yang. That's how it goes. We are equals, and we have to find a way to be equals, but are we there yet? Because of what the government did with society and making it a two-person working society. And I'm not, like, trying to victim mentality it. I'm just saying, like, maybe we should take care of that situation, because what the government, I think women like myself I refuse to work. I refuse. And if that makes us slightly poor, oh, well, because my children deserve a mother. And I think Absolutely. All women should do the same. Like, especially if you have children, if you don't have children, go ahead and work, because whatever. I mean, being a housewife, I think being a housewife is okay to be gone. The whole housewife where, like, you don't have children and you don't work, that's weird. But if you have children, they need a mother. And if it makes you poor, Absolutely. Oh well. Because if enough people took that out, that's got to go, because that's killing women en masse. And that's just killing poor, innocent, normal women that are just doing what they think society's telling them to do. So that's totally different to the fembots that I don't understand them. I think they might probably just mentally ill, and I feel very bad for saying that, but they're just so far removed from reality. And then equally, the incels or the Andrew Tate bros are also just unfortunately so mentally ill. Like, they don't.
Well, one thing I want to add real quick, I want you to keep going, but, you know, the incel mentality is the victim mentality.
Yeah.
In its core, well, not in its core, but it's a perfect example of the victim mentality, because, you know, really the reason why we have incels, right? And, like, I've known a few in my life. I've tried to try to help them, you know, and it is their own doing. Ultimately, it's their own doing why women won't talk to them, are not interested in them. A lot of them absolutely don't take care of themselves at all. A lot of them, like, I mean, dude, really bad, poor hygiene, man. Like, I actually used to be friends with one in high school, and like, we were into like some of the same stuff, and like, you know, he thought he was a cool guy, but like, you know, he was always like, you know, I can't stand women, like, blah, 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 like, they want nothing to do with me. And like, you know, I'd walk into his room and like, you know, like, I mean, shit would just be scattered everywhere. You know, he would always smell like to a degree and things like that. And, you know, like a lot of the incel mentality is a very huge form of the victim mentality. And it's like they don't want to do the work to improve themselves, to, you know, make themselves more, you know, not even just, they shouldn't just be improving themselves for women. They should be improving themselves for themselves, number one. And number two, they don't want to take the steps to admit that they could be the problem.
Mhm.
So like, I'm absolutely with you. And, you know, even on the same thing with, you know, the whole Andrew Tate thing, like, I just want to, in my eyes, like touch on what I think true toxic masculinity is real quick, because I think people get the term misconstrued. You know, toxic masculinity isn't wanting to, it's not wanting to be a provider for your family. It's not wanting to be a protector for your family. It's not wanting to be strong so you can be a protector for your family. You know, anything that has to do with the family unit, or, you know, as far as being a true masculine role, is not toxic masculinity. But what is toxic masculinity is what a lot of people call beta behavior. You know, I don't like using that term, you know, because I mean, it's just, for me, it's like, it's a pointless term. Like, you know, like, I'm not trying to divide people up. I'm trying to make them better. I want them to see, like, you know, like, you can be better, you know. But a lot of it, you know, a lot of men right now are very unhealed and insecure. And if they see another man who is in the process, I deal with this all the time. They see another man who is in the process of healing themselves and taking care of themselves. It's like they immediately go into fight and anger mode. Like they automatically don't like you for no reason. They're automatically an asshole to you for no reason, just because they see you and they perceive you as doing something they are unable to do, or having something that they are unable to achieve. And they take it out on the world around them and you. You know, another form so I'm going to say this, like, you know, men putting their insecurity on blast. You know, because when you're out there and you see somebody who's healing themselves, and you know, trying to take care of themselves and do better for themselves, and you immediately get angry and don't like them for it, that's you putting your insecurity on blast. That's basically what you're doing, and everybody around you knows what it is. You can't hide it. Okay, like, everybody knows that's what you're doing. So that would be toxic masculinity in my eyes. I do think also, you know, men who are stepping on the toes of other men, you know, and not looking out for, you know, their community and other men in their community. I know so many men who are willing to throw other men under the bus just to get to, whether it be a position in power, whether it be a position in authority, or whether it is to gain more popularity or clout or social status. Okay, but I see too many men that are willing to completely decimate anybody and destroy anybody's livelihoods and not give a fuck how they affect anybody else, just to get themselves into a certain position. That is toxic masculinity, 100%, at least to me. And, you know, there's more examples of it, but I just wanted to chime in with that because we see that in the incel crowd. And, you know, we kind of see that in the Tate crowd too. So keep going. I didn't mean to cut you off. Like, I liked where you're going with this, but like, yeah, I just want to throw that in there.
No, that's okay, because I have not much to add to them except that they are so far disconnected to what's true that, like, to bring it to a place of what's true that's helpful is marriage, and not even just marriages, but relationships and men and women working together. What we need to learn is to argue and how to argue, because like women, men, if there's this new thing, like, because they can't slap us. This is why they used to slap us. We'd get nagging, oh, maybe you should do this, that, and the other, because women can see more. We can, that's just what we do. And it's usually coming from a caretaker place, because we want you to be better, because that women never stop pushing. And this upsets men, but we never stop pushing. I even do this to you. Like, we never stop pushing, be better, be better, be better. And like, we do it to each other. Women are always doing that to each other. It's not like just a marriage thing. It's what women do in general. It's part of the feminine, but it's not meant to be a negative. But sometimes, especially in marriage, it'll come off more, oh, don't nag. And like, it'll get shut down. And what needs to happen is learning to argue and learning to discuss. I saw this video, and it's so, I haven't done it yet, but it so seems like a perfect idea. But the couple is forehead to forehead as they talk, like, it really upset me when you didn't come to my thing, blah blah blah. And then they're having this argument as their foreheads touch, and that just seems so perfect, because you keep yourself in a state of remembering you're in love. So like, everything that's coming out, it's coming out for the better good. But even between friends, or even like some random woman to some guy, if she's saying something, it's not to make, they always, this is the problem, is the men will think, oh, you just want me to feel small and nothing. And it's, women have, like, they say women's laugh, like if a woman laughs at a man, it could like break him. And women aren't, yeah, like women aren't necessarily, oh, I am, because I'm educated on it, but I didn't used to be, like, how much power women have. Because what naturally comes from the woman is they're scared of men. They don't think that men are going to cower at them. They think men disregard everything they have to say. So they do come at stuff really brash and like the typical bitch, you know, like when a girl's a boss, she's a bitch. Well, that's just how we say things, like when we're serious and it needs to get done. And this is why women will end up being people pleasers, because it's actually very hard for us to say our boundaries and say it nicely. This is something I've had to work at very much over the years, so that I could present things in my marriage, or even with my children, or even with my siblings and family, to like present it at, this is what I think you should do, but not in a I'm nagging way. So it's like this game of like, men need to learn to listen to women. Women also need to learn how much men actually are affected by them. We need to work on honesty and equalness, like the whole Homer Simpson thing, and men sitting on the couch and not helping. Well, there's tons of women now, I'm seeing it all over, like in these things I watch online about these women that also work full time and have to do all the momming as well. Like, that's killing them. So this whole retooling needs to happen, where men, and it's better for the children too, for men to get more involved with the children, and we're really just going to keep doing this, like the waves, right? Like, we are in a fight, like collectively, females and men are in a fight, a huge fight. There's a storm happening with our energy, and we're punching and hitting, like in the cosmos. Our energy is furious at each other. If you tap into it right now, I know I can feel I'm like enraged at the masculine. And I bet you feel like you're enraged at the feminine. Like, it's just a collective thing, not personal. And it's like, you can feel it, like how we can feel a lot of the different things happening. So like, we just got to keep, we're so different. We need to acknowledge the differences, yet also acknowledge where we're similar. We're similar in the fact that we all want to be happy. We all want love. We all want to be understood. Like, let's meet in the middle here. We all want compassion. We want to feel respected mutually, back and forth. Women actually like being caretakers, which is what I've realized. Because at first I was like, no, make your own dinner. But now I was like, no, you know what? I actually like doing that, but I don't like it to be expected because you're the woman, you do it. Like, no, like, it has to be just like a respect thing. And same when men do their men thing. Well, it's just because you're stronger, so it makes sense that you do it. Like, so we do have our roles in a fluid way. And it's really just, but like, respect. It's all going to come down to respect, mutual respect of our differences and our similarities. And what we can bring to the table is equal, but different. And then just respecting that. That's really the solution. But we're still going to play it out for possibly a couple more decades. We'll see.
I completely agree with you on, like, don't get me wrong. Me personally, I'm not angry at women. Like, don't get me wrong, but I know exactly what you're saying. I do pick up on that. Especially like when I have to interact with normal women on the everyday level, at work and things like that. And it's like I could feel them slightly angry at me, and like I don't even know this person. I'm not angry at them, but I feel it like inside. I'm like, what's going on here? And kind of touching on what you said on men. Well, that's because our archetype right now in the collective consciousness is still what I would say is a very old school archetype. And that's why a lot of us spiritual men out here are like trying to do the work to kind of bring that archetype up to speed a little bit. Be like, like, hey, look, it's we're evolving as a society and as a civilization, which means our roles as men are also kind of evolving too. Like, you have to understand that, like, and I'm like sitting there with the archetype, like having a talk with it, and it's like, well, I should just be able to go to work and make a paycheck and provide for my family. That should be good enough. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's a good thing. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but like you have to kind of, there's a little bit more to it than that. Like, you can't just, go to work and then come home and then, not spend time with your family and sit on the couch like Homer Simpson, exactly. And do all that kind of stuff. Like, you have to be a part, you have to be an emotional rock in the family. Like, you have to, have that emotional exchange with your wife, like, things like that. And like, that's just a very old school archetype because, like you were talking about, like, back in the 60s and things like that. Hey, what's up, Angel Wings? Thanks for being here. Appreciate you stopping in. But, they like, you look at how like it's even bombarded into, us men at work. Like, I remember like, like when I was coming up in the trade, right? And this is something that's still kind of perpetuated, and this is an example of that. Like, and if I said I couldn't work a weekend because I have, things I got to, take care of with my wife, or something like that, because they would push on overtime, all that stuff. That's the other wounded part of the male archetype I'll get into in just a second. But, and a lot of times my bosses would be like, well, just have your wife take care of it, come to work. We need you. I'm like, I'm sitting there. This dude's on like his fourth divorce too. I'm like looking at him, and I'm like, you're on your fourth divorce, or your third, and like you still have this mentality. Like, this is still how you think. And but it's perpetuated to us. Like, it's very much still in a lot of ways subconsciously implanted in us that all you need to do is go to work and, chase pleasure, chase instant gratification. Like, like when it comes to family things, and that's the other thing too, that's embedded into us men, is more work is better. But in all reality, it's not. So like, you have these men out there bragging to each other. Oh, I worked 80 hours this week, or, oh, I worked 100 hours this week. And it's like this, almost like this fucked up, disgruntled badge of honor that, a lot of men in our collective like try to wear. And, I'm like, yeah, how's your family feel that you're never fucking home? Like, how does it feel to have all of that money and be too dog shit tired to do anything with it? Like, like that's kind of like the, and that stuff is kind of, still to this day in a lot of ways. It's starting to change, like men like me, Don, Andrew, who's in the chat, all of us who are on our spiritual evolution, we're starting to understand and realize this, and so therefore we're like trying to push forth and heal this masculine archetype in our collective consciousness right now, and be able to like, look, dude, like, like we have to grow and evolve, and so do you. And right now it's kind of in the phase where it's like, I don't want to right now. And I'm like, no, it's not that bad. I promise. Like, you have to just let it go. And I think, that's going to start to, like you said, a couple of decades, we could still potentially see it kind of wind down and start to find the new balance. But that new balance, what could it be? You know what I mean? Like, that's the big question, because, the duel's going to keep going for a little bit until eventually we reach that new alignment and that new balance. And I want to hear in your words what you think this new balance could potentially be, Dyanna.
So it'll depend, because honestly, I keep racking my brain at the answer, because but communes and communities have a very bad name. So we would be talking a very big jump. But if we move to that jump where we're living more as communities again, which I think is most optimal, it'll be very group, and you will see it going masculine, feminine, because the men want to provide. That's good for them. That's the problem with like the tying it back to the incels, because women act like they want to make their own money. And if they're saying that when they're young, they don't know any better. Like, their women have been brainwashed. So like if a man was to actually step up and be a man and like be like that hero to her, she would of course be like, oh my God, yes. Like that's, no woman would say no to like her perfect man who wants to take care of her. That's not going to happen. So they need to like rise. So like if we were in that perfect sphere, the men would still be the ones building. Like if we really went back, like that would be what would make us actually happy, is where the men are building shelter and houses and whatever we're doing, because we're going back to more nature oriented. And then the females would be taking care of the kids and working together and doing all that stuff. But do we want to go that far back? Honestly, unfortunately, we're probably not. So how is it going to end up actually looking? And that's, we're going to become equal. The women have to stop working if they have children, because right there, you're killing the children. That's why the depression rate in children is so high, because they don't have their mother, and they get rid of daycares, abolish daycare, because they're throwing their children in daycare like a couple months after they're born. It's insane. So right there, that has to go. Women have to be raising their own children. And then from the get-go, we're kind of going back to basics though still, even if we want to keep it there. Not all the way though. Like, but in equalness, there would have been couples back in the 20s that had this figured out. Like, men are the providers. Even if we're not in a monetary system, they're still going to be the one that go and get the stuff, because that's what they want. That fills their systems. That's what makes them happy. Just like women are made happy by taking care of the children and taking care, like care, protection. That's like two ultimate things of what they want. It's going to have different playing roles, as there's all these different things we do. If you're an artist or if you're not, like, it's going to flow, but you need to, whoever you're with. And if our genders keep, like, one thing that's happening is like, and I see that in us, the divergence is I'm not as girly as a girl. And like, you're not that He-Man of a man, because I think it's coming like this. Like, the hyperness is actually just being changed, and that's divine. So it's going to be the divine keeps pushing it that way, as well as our own education in these matters are going to push us to come this way. But I don't know what's happening with the split, because that's why I'm like unsure of what to say, because the split really determines how this is going to look, because I wanted the pure split where we don't see them anymore. But that doesn't seem to be happening. So they're still going to exist, which means they're going to keep tainting us. I don't see a system where they don't, like, we're going to energetically cross, and that's going to keep messing us up. So they have to go.
So one thing real quick before I give my response, we have angel wings, balance within multiple perspectives, balance those energies. Hard for others to keep open minds on everything. Really, everyone thinks they know it all. I'm not afraid to admit that I don't know everything. And that is why, angel wings, you are always going to be okay. And you are always going to progress and evolve. 100%.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, you know nothing, Jon Snow. That's like something I always keep in my head. You know nothing, Jon Snow.
That is definitely the Game of Thrones right there. The Game of Thrones. And then we have Kyle. Spending 80 hours a week on anything seems excessive. Absolutely. So what I think you're right. So this is what I kind of foresee. I foresee a new balance occurring. Now, kind of what you were saying too, like, we see a lot of the trad movement, and we see a lot of conservatives, especially, trying to kind of push us back in time, trying to push us back, to the way things were, in like the 50s, 60s, and 70s and things like that. And my thing is from the family structure and the moral component of it all, I completely understand where kind of they come from on that. But here's the thing. We don't live in the 50s, 60s, and 70s anymore. We don't live in that world anymore. We're now in the year 2025. Okay, we are in, I used to give, one of the things I always used to give all the boomers crap for when I was growing up as a kid, like especially in the 90s, they would be like, man, we live in such a completely different world than we used to. And I would always be like, man, it's not that different. What are you talking about? Me being a young kid. And here I am about to be 37 years old, looking back at how long I've been alive from here to 2025. We live in a much different world than when I was growing up, a much different world. So we can take these attributes, such as the family structure, the having good morals and values, when it comes to being a human being and this family structure. I mean, that's a key integral part of any spiritual evolution, is to have good values and be morally aligned to what is good and for the benefit of creation and things like that. That's definitely there. But we can take some of these things and we can implement them in a new way, in a new light, okay? Because that's the thing. We're not going to be able to go back in time. Because if you open any sociology textbook and you see civilizations and societies regressing, it always usually means that's the end of that society, or that's the end of that civilization. So we can't go backwards. We can only go forwards from here. So, we can take that stuff and we can implement it in a new way with balance. Okay. And I think what's going to happen is eventually, like you said, the man and the woman are going to become equal, and equal in the sense that the woman is going to have her strengths and her weaknesses that work with our strengths and our weaknesses. There's going to be that equalization there here, because let me tell you what, man, like us men can't multitask very well. You guys are fucking amazing at it. I don't even know how. Yeah, like my wife can focus on like 7 to 10 things at once. Like I'm like, I don't know how the hell I could even achieve something like that. I mean, like maybe 3 max, but I think what we're going to come to understand is that balance is that, that we are together. We are equal in the stance that we are humans here on this planet. We both deserve the same amount of love. We both deserve the same amount of respect. We both deserve all of that. And I think what we're going to find is a new synergy is going to emerge between the masculine and the feminine. We're going to complement each other as opposed to combating each other, and that's what I think it even plays out in relationships today. Like, like what you were saying, that internal collective anger from the masculine and the feminine. I mean, you can even see play out in relationships, like, and things like that. Like we are outwardly bringing that energy here. But what I think is going to happen is, we're going to reach that new synergy. We're going to reach that new equilibrium. And there is going to be that mutual respect. We're going to have an understanding that, my strengths complement your weaknesses. Your strengths complement my weaknesses. Okay. And in that sense, we are equal and we work together, and there's that synergy. I think that's ultimately going to be a realization. I mean, this should have been the realization all along. Don't get me wrong. This should be what is right now. But of course, like you said, it's going to play out like,
Well, I have advice too that would actually help people. And that is, and I'm always saying this, and people say don't get tied down, but astrology and human design. Now that we have these technologies, when you're looking at marrying someone, especially, or even when you're in the early stage of dating and you think you're falling in love, stop before you fully fall. Do your charts, because if it's never gonna be a thing, like you gotta find, it doesn't have to be perfect, but like if it's a complete like don't bother. Like, because there's ones that are going to be complete matches for you, and that's a start, because that'll help you have, because like we know with friendships and anything, you have certain synergy and your vibes. Like sometimes you don't understand why you don't vibe with someone and they seem perfectly fine. You should be friends with them, but it's just like not there. That's because they're a Virgo and you're a Sagittarius, and it's just not going to happen. Like there's different, and then there's obviously subsections of astrology. It's not just your signs. That's why you have to do a full charting. And that will help you start to set something. Because if you're going to be permanent, you want to see, that's just going to huge help. And then even if you're in with someone that the chart's not fully aligned on, it'll still help you get over and transverse all those things where you don't vibe, and you can be like, oh, well, that's because you're a Cancer and you like to deal with your emotions like this. Like, that's what I do, because I did the star charting later and it was like, oops, but it's like, you know what to do. So like, there's always something that you can do. It's like your own little system and cheat codes within your relationship to figure out why they're thinking. Because a lot of the time, like, we don't know what each other are thinking, like men to women, because we think so differently. And like, how could he say that? And how could she, like, he's probably not even thinking about it. He's just, because that's just how the different systems work. But we have tools and ways to start. And then just the Heros Gamos of the self. The more we get into that complete balance of the masculine, feminine inside, the more it's going to replicate on the outside.
Completely agree. Well, and that's too, and I'm going to add to that too. Like, yeah, like, normally, like, let's use this scenario. There are ways around it, because let's say, like I, as a Taurus, right? Like, if I were in a hypothetical situation to be looking at another Taurus as a partner, sometimes that's a recipe for disaster. Just based on that. But I could have different stuff in my chart, and that other Taurus could have different stuff in their chart that kind of like actually changes that element a little bit. You know what I mean? It's not going to be like, triple moon goddess Taurus on triple moon god Taurus or something like that, which, like, oh my goodness, like, that would be an interesting one. Like, don't get me wrong. But like, there could be other things in the chart that make you compatible, even though, like, like, you could both be water signs, like, like, you would think that's a glass case of emotion, but like, this water sign could have a earth ascendant sign that gives them more of, like, kind of that grounded nature to them that can kind of help facilitate with all that. So I completely agree with you on that. And, I think that's ultimately what's going to happen too. Is, we're going to get that new synergy. I also liked what you said about community becoming more involved. Also, I do think that's also a possibility in the future. I mean, we look at a lot of Native Americans and a lot of indigenous tribes, and they had that, like, even though, like, yes, you had your kids that you might have made, but, in the sense, like, all of the kids of the tribe or all of the kids in the community were looked after. Like, you know what I mean? There was that kind of like that sense of responsibility, because these are the future. This is the future of our world, these children right here. And while, yes, this might not be my kid, it might be my two friends' kid. I'm going to look after that, like, as my own child, like, because especially because he is the future too. So I do definitely see a more community aspect coming into the fold, 100%. I do think as we too, but we also have to look at how, we're changing right now. Like right now, despite the dueling dance of the divine masculine and feminine, we're actually kind of, we're on a good timeline. We're getting shifted towards a more healthy mind-body timeline. And I do think a lot of these instances could be organic, because we look at right now, I mean, I think I've talked with you about this before. We got the two aspects of this awakening. We have the conscious side and the subconscious side. And what I mean by the conscious side is, people like us who are the light posts to bring the higher frequency. We're terraforming this planet, the frequencies on this planet right now, the best we can. And, we're putting in the work and the energy into increasing the frequency of this planet. But then you have the subconscious aspect too. The people who are changing from our energy and our work. I've seen so many people starting to get into meditation, yoga, homesteading, freaking tarot cards, like other different spiritual practices, like, reading the book The Secret, like even making their own bread, things like this, like making their own food, starting to be more self-sustainable. Like we're seeing this shift, this positive bump into what I would call definitely a more positive timeline. And I think this community factor and the settling of the energies too could definitely be an organic thing, because as we continue on this, it might take a couple of decades, like you said, don't get me wrong, but as we get shifted closer towards this healthier mindset, this mind, body, spiritual health as we are as a society, I think a lot of this is going to come organically. But even though it came organically, I think it did come from a lot of the work that we've done here. on ourselves. It's almost like that 100th monkey effect. It's like it's finally just now starting to take hold. And it's like, it's so cool. I see like people getting, like people who would never in my life ever think, don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, I love Buddhism. I love it. I think there's a lot of great things about it. Is it my main spirituality? No, but I see people, who would never even entertain getting into something like Buddhism, or like strict atheists, like you said, who are now moving into being Buddhists. Like, it's like the craziest thing to me. I'm looking at somebody who was like, fuck God, I don't believe in religion. Like a mere 10 years ago, like now I'm a practicing devout Buddhist. I'm like, what? Like, it's like definitely, we're seeing this effect. So I think a lot of this stuff is going to happen. 100%. I think another thing we do too is like, people like you and I, and a lot of us in our conscious collective, like, we want things to happen at our pace. Like we get kind of like frustrated when things aren't happening fast enough. It's like, we wake up every morning, we're like, where's the goddamn table? I want to flip it today. I'm absolutely done, but like, this is where, like, when I told you about that ascension symptoms thing, where it's like, switching throughout the day, this is where it's like, take a step back and look at the beauty of it all, because it's happening, and we're starting to see the divine manifest itself into our reality on a deeper level. It's starting off on the very subtle right now, but as things, they always start off small and they always snowball. There's always that snowball effect with them. So I think you're absolutely right. I think we're going to see that balance. We're going to see that synergy. We're going to potentially see a new reignition within us of this community factor when it comes to families and things like that. And I think eventually we're, like I said, we're on a really good trajectory at this point in time when it comes to this. So I think you're absolutely right. I think we're going to find a new balance. I think it's going to showcase itself in a very interesting way. And I think it's going to be overall what I think all of us, from both the masculine archetype of our collective consciousness and the feminine archetype of our collective consciousness, ultimately wants. It is that equivalency. It's that respect, the mutual respect, because we're both deserving of respect. We're both deserving of love. We both deserve to be listened to. We both deserve to be heard, and my strengths complement your weaknesses. Your strengths complement mine. And that's the beautiful part of it all. It doesn't have to be one's better than the other. One matters more than the other. And I think that is eventually going to come to fruition.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, Dyanna, it was great to have you on again. Like I said, this is your second solo appearance. You've been on the show other times, but your second solo appearance. I had a great time talking with you, as always. I think we broke down a lot of really cool things. So before, if you can hang out for a couple minutes after we get off, but before we sign off for tonight, I want to let everybody know I have Dyanna's website. I have her X profile, and I have her YouTube video link at the bottom of both the Rumble and the YouTube descriptions. But if there's anywhere else anybody can find you, and anything else that you're working on right now that you want to tell everybody about, now would be the time.
Well, my main website, transcendingascension.com, is where I can help you get out of victim mentality. But I also have a second website where I welcome anyone that wants to be a teacher to join in, because I made it kind of for children, but also for beginners. I try to keep it like friendly for both. Where I have a bunch of lessons. I haven't done one in a while, but there's already a bunch of stock lessons there: quantum physics, astrology, podlingsacademy.com. And yes, that's from the Dark Crystal, podlingsacademy.com. And there's just lessons there. And I plan to just keep building that. And then other than that, we've been doing our panel every weekend. So far, so good, doing it every weekend, which I'm loving. And it's group healing for all of us, Karen. So thank you for being a part of the team. I love everybody there. Yeah. And if there's anybody that wants to join, or if you want to just tune in and ask us questions, we're always there to answer, as we are basically just kind of, my whole reason behind it was to push the future faster. And if we were to bring our consciousnesses together, that's just what collective consciousnesses do. Plus, we could make ourselves a good egregore, because there can be good egregores just like bad ones. And then just to get that push behind what like-minded people want to see happen. And like, let's push our narrative forward, because why not? Like, the all is mind. We are making our own reality. So why not do everything in our power in a love and light way to push forward what we want to see manifest in this world? And then other than that, I have years of content now on YouTube that you could go and see. And I work with people on my website for free or for money. But for money, if you want to actually have a camera one-to-one, that's the only time I charge you. If you just want to email back and forth and I'm allowed to do it whenever I want, then that's free. And then, yeah, and that's me.
Amazing. Well, thank you for all that you're doing. And yes, I love our panel. I shout out to everybody on the panel: Don, Karen, Raquel, Sam, freaking Kirsten, and Susan also as well, right? Yes, David's wife. Sarah, David's wife. My bad. Sorry about that, David. But yes, Sarah as well. And no, this is great. I think this is the start of something good. And I think we're just going to keep pushing forward, and nothing can stop us. Just like today, X wasn't allowing live streams, then all of a sudden they're allowing them. So, maybe our watchers and our egregores had a conversation with some people and we're like, hey, now, like, we can't be playing dirty like this. But nonetheless, guys, thank you for joining me for another Wednesday live podcast here at BG-Cast. As far as who my guest is next week, it could be potentially a couple of people. It could be Kyle and Cody. If they get back to me on their email. I know you two are watching right now. So yeah, let me know what's going on. And or if Kyle and Cody cannot make it, we don't know. We're going to see. It might be a solo show or we'll have another guest. So we will find out. But thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, tonight. I hope the show was helpful to you. And I will catch you guys next Wednesday. You all have a great night. Take care. Be safe. Be strong. And keep on keeping on. Have a good one, everybody.